And we're recording.
Our two councilmen have other meetings that they have to go to also. So that's why I want us to start, pretty much on time. So when they pop in, we won't be too far behind. So.
Okay, we're live.
Great. Okay.
I'm seeing it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, Bernard is on. So Lisa should be on by the time we get down to her. She'll be the last one going. So, you ready for us to start?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I welcome everybody to our roundtable discussion. My name is Elaine Short. I am the president of the NAACP Far Rockaway branch. And before we get started, I just want to say to everybody to please fill out your census. If you have someone, if you know someone who might not have filled it out, or like if you got like mommy or grandma, that fill it out for them, do it online for them, help them out. And we have an election coming up on June 23rd, please. We have to vote. We got early elections June 13th to June 21st. And then you could do your mail-in. You can have the ballot to mail in. So please, we got to make sure we vote. So I just wanted to say those two things before we get started, okay? All right, now, as I said, I am grateful that the NAACP, Far Rockaway Branch, and the Rockaway Women for Progress has teamed up together to have this roundtable discussion about racism in the Black community. The NAACP has fought this ugly plague called racism since 1909. We have endured beatings and lynching. The Black male and female did not have a chance for a trial. They were dragged out of jail and hung. Time really have not changed. The Rockaway and other communities still practice and teach racism. When a young man stopped in a pizza shop because his car broke down and was chased across Bell Parkway, which caused his death when he was hit by a car, just for being in the area. And when the fire department made a mockery of James Byrd Jr., a man who was dragged to death in Texas in 1998, I believe, the NAACP and the Action Network marched down Broad Channel. So this is a culture that is taught. And it's not going to change until people are held accountable. I thank God that Rockaway is not as bad as other cities in the United States. Or is it really? I put that question out for y'all to think about. When I moved here 37 years ago, one of the main things that was put into my head was do not go down to Rockaway Park after dark. And to this day, I do not go down to Rockaway Park after dark. I mean, even when I go to meetings in that area, I'm in the car. I do not drive, but I make sure someone is with me who drives, so I don't have to stand at the bus stop after dark. So, that's just something that shows that it's a culture that was embedded into people. Because you look at the sheriff department, that was created to keep the slaves in place. So when you have, and you look at when you have a union leader, like the union leader of our police department, you can't expect for police to be held accountable when you have a union leader like that. It is time for America to open its eyes. America has never been great. It has not been great for the indigenous people. It have not been great for Black people. And it barely was great for white women, because y'all were treated as second-class citizens. Y'all didn't even have the right to vote. That didn't come into effect until 100 years ago. So, you know, something to think about, you know. And then I also wanted to just mention about the myth that Black people are killing white people. So I say, check your statistics. You can go and Google it up. 2016, it shows where 3,499 crimes were committed against white people. 2,854 people who committed the crime against the white people were white. Only 533 people who committed crime against white people were Black. Now, a total of 2,870 crimes that were committed against Black people, but 2,570 were committed by Black on Black crime. Only 243 were committed by white. So what does this say? This says that it's the crime is committed on the set and where you live at. You got Black on Black crime, you have white on white crime. So it's not that Black is going to the white area, or even white areas is coming to the Black area. And I just wanted to leave another question to think about, because I mentioned more crime being committed by the white race, but when you look at the jails, the prisons, who's filling up the jails? You know, so that's just another thing that I want to leave you with. And now I'm going to turn over opening remarks to Jean so that she can introduce herself.
Thanks, Lane. Hi, everyone. I'm Jean Belford and president of Rockaway Women in Progress. And, you know, we are a relatively new group in Rockaway. And I'd like to first start by thanking the NAACP for trusting us to partner in this space. We're coming here today to be in a place of accountability and listening. And we'll start by saying that Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. George Floyd, Eric Garner, Sean Bell, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, and countless others have been murdered by bad police and racist citizens. And as the proud daughter and sister of New York City firemen and 9/11 first responders, this conversation is not about good cops. This conversation is about racism and bad cops existing in a system designed to protect behaviors it should not be protecting. We are sorry this keeps happening, and as a mostly white group of women, we are here to listen and stand with you in unity and solidarity. To quote Alan Johnson, the trouble around difference is really about privilege and power, the existence of privilege and the lopsided distribution of power that keeps it going. The trouble is rooted in a legacy that we all inherited, and while we're here, it belongs to us. It isn't our fault. It wasn't caused by something we did or didn't do, but it's now ours. It's up to us to decide how we're going to deal with it before we collectively pass it along to the next generations that will follow ours. And living in Rockaway, we all know firsthand the lopsidedness of privilege and power. And as a group, we support the recent repeal of 50A and recognize that we must lean into uncomfortable conversations. I personally have much to learn and much work to do. And I say this as someone who can never understand the anguish that Black people, Black mothers go through. We hope this is a conversation and a step in the right direction, and that together we can affect change and peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I would like for us to just jump right into our first story. So I'm gonna ask Adam, if he wouldn't mind. You have 3 minutes, Adam, to tell us your story?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Groves. I've grown up in Far Rockaway all my life, and just thinking back when racism started taking place in my life is when I was younger. We used to play sports. We would go to Beach Channel just to get away from the neighborhood. I'm from Hamels Houses, and we used to just to get away from the neighborhood. We would go and play football at Beach Channel, and we'll be having a good time until a bunch of guys would come around, like a bunch of white guys would come around the field, you know, and then we'll be being chased home. And as young men, and as I got a little older, we used to be upset about it, and we used to want to fight, but it started showing us that there were actually boundaries set in Rockaway and just everywhere. So like you couldn't go past Stella Maris High School, I believe it's a high school. You couldn't go past Stella Maris or to be like 116th Street because you weren't, like I said, the boundaries were kind of set at that point. So you knew, and then like Broad Channel, if you go to McDonald's too late in this, you're caught over there, you would have issues. The guy who got killed in Howard Beach actually lived in my neighborhood. His name is Johnny, and I actually took place in that march when we went to Broad Channel, when they were having the thing where they were dragging the guy from the back of a truck.
Yeah.
We went and we marched, and it as a young man, I was just always trying to figure out, it leaves us in a place of euphoria. Like you get scared, because you want to bridge the gaps, you want to make a change, but sometimes the things that people are taught at home overpowers trying to get to know each other in a culture. So I think you guys are having a great forum, and this will allow a lot of people to open up and learn each other so that we can go forward and make changes together.
Thank you very much. And next is Tatiana. Would you and Barbara could go in that order? Y'all, do anybody want to have anything to discuss after Adam's story? Is Tatiana on?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your story and for also organizing this call. I know this is very difficult times for many of you, many of us, but this is a hard but important conversation that we are having here, not in the Rockaways. So yes, my name is Tatiana Bejar. I live in Auburn in the Rockaways. I am a board member of the Rockaway Women for Progress, and I'm here as a Latina woman, as a brown and immigrant woman, to be in solidarity with Black people's struggles. And in Latin America and the Caribbean, we were colonized by the same power. We were thought always to be anti-Black, right? To ignore the big diaspora of African people in this part of the region, right, where I'm coming from. I'm coming from Peru. So one of the duties I feel like as a immigrant woman is we need to start challenging that narrative, that anti-Blackness narrative. We need to start decolonizing that narrative. We are under the same system of oppression here, and we need to acknowledge that white supremacy impacts Black people in particular ways, right? And sometimes brown people, immigrant people have some privilege, no, in that sense. But white supremacists impact Black people in ways that are economically and racially, and I have seen just recently with the COVID-19, no, Black people are twice as much to die due to the virus. So definitely there are issues that we need to bring more visibility and more understanding in our communities. No, we also need, communities of color also need to understand that we won't be liberated until Black communities are liberated. No, that's very important for us to understand. And I think that we need to be very bold in looking for systemic change and not just small reforms. No, I think we should go farther than just saying defunding the police. We need to really challenge the economic power that is perpetrating this racial oppression. So there are definitely a long conversation, no, about how we can bring communities, no, of color in solidarity, how we can bring white people, no, in this struggle, and really appreciate that we are having this conversation, and I appreciate, Elaine, you leading today, no, and here and make myself available, no, and to volunteer or to be, no, under your leadership. Thank you for
Thank
this
you.
opportunity.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Barbara?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Elaine, and everybody who's already presented a little bit. I have to say that I could not be simultaneously more proud to be part of this conversation, and at the same time saddened that we're actually having it, but I'm glad to be here. I am a social worker. I'm a seasoned social worker, and I have to admit that even I, as a social worker, this point in my life, have a lot to learn. I know as a social worker that to assume anything about a person and their experience, their problems, their feelings, their passions, their dreams, it's immediately a statement and an expression of prejudice and a failure and an inability to see that person or any of their history or what brings them to the table. Those are the things I know. I know that racism is not limited to bad people. And I can say that I'm personally willing to search within myself to uncover my own explicit and implicit contributions to the racism that exists in our society, in our community, and further. And I recognize that this is an ongoing process. It's the beginning. Conversations like this are the beginning of that. I think that these are humbling conversations, and but just the start to finding long-term real understanding, and for myself and my family and the people that I can influence to own our contributions and to those problems. And I know it's a minefield to step into as a privileged white woman. I know there will be missteps, but I'm committed to the dialogue, and I appreciate the forum. Thank you.
I thank you. I thank you for those words, and I really felt that it was from your heart, and that says a lot. And that's what we want to bridge the gap, to get open, you know, because it's something that we can't overlook anymore. We can't close our eyes to anymore. And as a Black mother, the fear that I have is not similar to the fear that you had. I'm so glad you said the word white privilege, because as a mother, that fear that I have when my child is out, and I wonder, my son goes all over the world. He's been to Greece, he's been to Italy, performing and whatnot, but I'm still scared to death. And when I hear his voice, you know, that's why one reason he calls me every day, but it just makes me, you know, because you don't know what can happen and where it can happen. And that's why I'm glad to see that the world, all over the world is opening up. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and that's Bernard. So will you come in to tell your story?
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Bernard Short. So when I was 15 years old, I was with some friends on my way to visit another friend's house. And we entered my friend's building and got into the elevator. And we pushed 3 because we were heading to the 3rd floor. However, the elevator skipped our floor and it took us up to the 6th floor. So when we exited the elevator, we began to walk downstairs to the correct floor. As we were exiting the 6th floor on our way down to the 5th floor, all we heard was freeze from behind us. So immediately this startled us because we thought we was about to get robbed. So we tried to run to safety. Then we heard a gunshot go off. And then soon following that, we heard the next nigga that moved get shot in his thigh. So we just all froze. We stopped because, you know, we were scared, and we looked up and we was shocked because we saw it was the police with guns drawn at us. And as we looked up at the officers, we were both confused and baffled because we did nothing to warrant being shot at, number one, nor did we do anything to even warrant police contact, period. Throughout our confusion came anger in addition to fear because we were led at gunpoint up to the roof of that building. And at that point, we didn't know what was going to happen. While we were being led to the roof of the building, all I could think about was my mother's instructions. Whenever you're stopped by the police, don't say anything. Cooperate with them at all times and do whatever they ask you to do. And this is going through my head over and over and over again. So once we were on the roof, we were frisked. We were belittled verbally and interrogated for at least an hour. All of this was done without probable cause, and it was done on the roof of a building, which in itself was inappropriate because to be on the roof of a building, you're automatically trespassing. So in a sense, they forced us to actually commit a crime by forcing us up there on the roof with guns drawn. I remember hearing the officer's words, "Oh, this guy here, he must be dirty because he's too quiet. Frisk him again." And because I was quiet and because I was cooperative, this caused me to be frisked over 10 times. I remember thinking, what did I do wrong? If I didn't do what you asked, I probably would have been shot. But because I'm doing what you asked, I must be dirty? Is there a correct course of action for me? After the 10th time I was frisked, I remember an officer asking me, "Hey, would you like a flying lesson?" And then he pointed over to the off of the side of the roof. And I remember asking myself, is there even a correct response to this question? Is there anything that I can do in this moment right now that would save my life? If I fight to save my life, I'll die. If I cooperate and do what they ask, I will die. What can I do? It doesn't seem to be a good option to take right here. I don't want to die before my life begins. The only thing that saved me is the fact that 2 black cops walked up there and took us to the precinct. Now, this interaction created a deep loathing hatred for the police department within me. And it was because I always seemed to fit the description, but I've never committed a crime.
You have 30 seconds left.
Now, the question that I'll leave you all with is this. Should the grandson of a Gold Star detective have these feelings for men who currently wear the badge that his grandfather wore with pride?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Bernard. Dr. Bernard Short, who is my son, and I have given that message to. Do not bother with the officers. Do not get after them or anything. And so I'd like to have Fern, if you wouldn't mind coming in.
Thanks, Elaine. I'm still trying to process what I just heard.
both from Benjamin and the previous speaker. I have to tell you that I am so pained by what I'm hearing, by what's happening in our country, what's happening in our community. I grew up here, went to school here, was at Far Rockaway High School. And some of you might remember that I worked at the Adabo Health Center I was there for about 15 years, heading up their mental health services, and started a program called PRISE, Project for Rockaway Youth in Safety and Education. And we worked so hard to bring the community together at that time. And we actually brought down youth violence and had events called a Collaboration for Unity in the Rockaway community. It was called Kirk. And we did so much. And then we see what's happening now, and hearing these stories brings me back to the pain and the passion that I think has driven me throughout. Some of you know I'm the child of Holocaust survivors. Both my parents were survivors. And so I know what silence and inaction in the face of racism and prejudice can bring. Elie Wiesel has warned us that those who are complacent are complicit. My mother, who went in 1962 with 50 women to the Geneva Peace Conferences, she actually went and stood beside Coretta Scott King. There was something in the Herald Tribune that said, "Women from the Warsaw Ghetto, women from the Negro Ghetto, strike out for peace together." That was the environment that I worked in. She always said that evil exists, but goodness will prevail if we fight for it. And that's what we have to be doing. We have to be fighting for this. This forum is giving me an opportunity to fight on such an important front with my friends, with my neighbors. It's helping me to challenge my own thinking and be open to recognizing my own prejudices and biases. Because without that kind of self-reflection and honesty, it's so difficult to bring about change. We have to be honest with ourselves and with each other. It's so important because without this dialogue and without action, we cannot bring about meaningful and sustainable change. So I'm so appreciative of this opportunity and so appreciative of this partnership that we're forming. And bringing the two sides of the peninsula together is something we've been working, we've been dreaming, I've been dreaming of, and see this as a real opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Now is there, Zozetta, are you on? Did I pronounce it correctly? Zozetta, Josettete?
Josette.
Josette, am I pronouncing it right?
You are.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay.
I was on mute. I'm not too technologically savvy. I apologize so much. I would first just like to echo the thanks that everyone has put forward for inviting us to this extremely powerful discussion. I too, like Firm, and very taken aback, and I know my emotional IQ, and so forgive me that the words that I wanted to speak today, I actually prepared in writing. So forgive me if I sound a bit more scripted. I just knew that it would be very difficult for me personally to get out what I needed to get out. So, with that, I just wanted to say that during these last few weeks, we've been reacting to, the most recent yet not unfamiliar demonstrations of the devastating impact of ongoing racial injustice in our country, and seeing the enormous toll these events have taken on our Black communities in particular. Yet, at the same time, this past week and specifically this weekend for me have been inspiring, as hundreds of thousands of people across the country and really around the world have peacefully protested, calling for urgently needed changes in furtherance of racial justice. And, slowly you're seeing that call be heard, across the world. In this time of profound sadness, we're seeing an unprecedented recognition of a need for change, a willingness to engage in a meaningful conversation, and the start of the long and difficult task of implementing the change that's necessary to alter a history that I can say I'm no longer proud of, and no longer can we as mankind can ignore. Today presents an extraordinary opportunity for me, though, to consider my role in this undertaking. And the first step is to listen. And that's what I'm here to do today. The next step is for me to hold myself, very much like what Barbara was discussing, and others accountable. You know, I plan to listen to the pain and the voices and the words of so many members of our Black communities. And I plan to listen to the questions from so many about what to do. I also plan to listen to our elected officials and officials across the world about what they plan to do and what their messages are. And last, I really do plan to listen to myself so I can, you know, figure out ways that I can do better. Ultimately, I plan to hold myself accountable, and I really hold to plan those around me accountable. You know, calling out inequality when you see it is a hard task, but it's something that I'm committed to, and I think everyone here is committed to doing that. Forcing the difficult conversations to be had, and I plan to make every attempt to ensure that those in power remain committed to a universal mankind. So again, thank you, you know, for inviting me to participate. Elaine, you've always been a wonderful partner to Rockaway Women for Progress, and that's been inspiring for me on many, many levels. And I really am here to just listen and take my part in the struggle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we're going to continue with our third story. And I would like to bring a mother on, a Black mother who she wears many hats, but she's wearing the hat today of a mother. So Ms. Lisa George. Lisa?
I'm muted. I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Yes. Hello and good afternoon to everyone. I want to thank you for organizing this very important discussion, because it's something that's been weighing very heavy on my heart for a while. And what I'm about to talk about is not very easy. As a Black mother who lives in the Rockaways, who has a son who's 17 years old, and he goes to an integrated school, there's been some things that has been happening at Scholars Academy. I want to say first and foremost that I am a supporter of Scholars Academy. I wouldn't pick any place else for my son to go. He has accepted the topic and discussion of racism in the school, in my opinion, has not been addressed. And it's been going on for quite some time now with the students. I can go back to about 3 years ago when my son came to me and told me that Black History Month was being given in March instead of February, and that he and a couple of students were very upset about it. And when I reached out to the school to, you know, just get an answer as to why Black History Month was being held in March, you know, they gave me some reasons why, what happened, that the kids weren't prepared and they needed space and the space wasn't available, and it just went on and on and on. But, you know, I made it clear to the principal with the students regarding this, because they're clearly very upset about it and it should never happen again. So at that point, that's when I really realized that there was something going on. My son doesn't really say if it's going on in between him, but I have other mothers that have reached out to me and contacted me over the years about things students are writing online. There has been a Snapchat page that was made, and some racial and Black people up until last week during the George Floyd incident. And some of the stuff I saw, I couldn't believe my eyes that this was coming from students at the school, much less sixth graders. And when the parent intervened to tell the students that you shouldn't do it, they taunted her and dared her to go and tell. We screenshotted them from those individuals that did it. The information was sent into the school, the chancellor's office, and District 27. And my plea and my ask to the school is to address this head on. Do not sweep it. I feel in the past it's been swept under the carpet and it's never really been dealt with. And we can't move forward today talking about ending racism if we're not addressing it in the very same schools with our youth. Whatever conversations that we need to have, whatever type of training
You got
or
20 seconds.
20 seconds. My ask to everyone here is let's start talking to our youth about racism. My mother never really spoke to me about it. I have these conversations with my son. I'm hoping that the school, I've spoken with the school and the principal, and they've told me that they're going to address this. And I just wanted to share my story today as, you know, what some of the kids are going through at the school that are living on the eastern end versus the western end. There's a lot of tension there, and before it gets worse, I'm asking everybody to let's have this conversation with our kids and the school. If there are any parents here on the line from the school, we need to definitely do something and not think it's going to go away, because it's not.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So now, Jody, if you would like to say something after.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you also for including, I'm Jody from Rockaway Women for Progress, and thank you also for including us in this conversation. I think it's extremely important. And I just wanted to share that as a part of my own personal work, I have spent a great deal of time over the past few years studying. I do work in the field of positive psychology, and I study spiritual leaders and writers. And through my work, I've always felt that I understood the concept of empathy. And in my work, the idea and the work with empathy has always been really important to really understand others, and especially important with the idea that understanding that we're all one, and that as humans and souls, we're all connected. And with this work, coupled with the work that I do with Rockaway Women for Progress in the field of social justice and human rights, I thought I had a good grasp of my own place in the fight for equality and the work fighting for minority communities. And I was really comfortable with the work that I was doing. And then George Floyd was murdered, and I was horrified, and I was devastated by what they did to him. I was devastated by the lack of action, of the reaction, of everything that happened after. And as I started to listen more closely, I found myself feeling even more deeply impacted by the endless stories I was hearing of racism and equality, much like what I'm hearing today. And as I read a lot and I listened to the stories that I was hearing and I talked to people, I think for the first time, I really understood empathy. And a lot of what I'm connecting to what Barbara said, and I see you reacting, and I get emotional. I think I never really understood what empathy was. And I really now see empathy as a critical step to moving forward. So for me, the path to racial justice took on a new meaning. Empathy is when you can truly put yourself in another person's shoes and you can feel what that person's going through, which is not easy in any way. You can understand how they're viewing and experiencing their nows, their world, and you bring yourself into their world as you are them, but you need to do so without judgment. You release your attachment to how you think they should feel or do things, and you release your judgment on how they should react. Empathy opens your heart and allows you to see your fellow humans and care for them in a way that you can't understand. And that is not an easy step, but I think it's necessary. So I've not only seen this step forward in myself, but I have seen glimpses of it, as Josette was talking about, in terms of change around us. I have seen some of this in people around me and some of my friends and neighbors, and having some of the hard conversations. But I think that empathy to what our Black community has gone through is a key to moving forward. So it's not just listening, but it's also empathy and being able to feel and understand what the Black community has experienced, so that impactful changes can be made and that step can be made to move forward. So that's sort of what my experience has been. And again, I thank you for inviting me to this conversation. And it's really hard, but it's work that needs to be done.
Thank you so much. Before we do closing remarks, I wanted to see if Councilman Donovan Richards and if Councilman Eric Garner was on, because I know they both have previous, they have to another meeting that they have to attend. So if Councilman Richards is on, I would like us to see the floor to him for, you got 3 minutes, Councilman.
Great.
On 3.
Thank you so much,
just to
Elaine.
comment on what you heard today, and what can you do to help us to move forward and to correct this broken system that we have?
Well, I'll tell you what we have been doing, but you know, certainly as a kid from Southeast Queens and Rockaway, I mean, we're not immune to these experiences. You know, my first experience with stop and frisk was 13 years old, guns drawn on me, right? I mean, we go through school, prison to school pipeline, you go through scanning, right? God forbid the scanner picks you up wrong, you get patted down, then you leave school, and then you got police on every corner and horses guiding you to the bus stop. So over-policing is nothing new. The deaths of Black and brown folks like Sean Bell, who was my neighbor in Far Rockaway, you know, are not anything new. I attended Eric Garner's trial pretty much every day. I mean, and those autopsy photos are something that never leaves your memory, right? And now we have George Floyd, you know, 6 years later. So, you know, so I'm just reassuring everybody here that we remain committed. And we have taken some steps forward with the 101, which historically always had a lot of issues, in the 100 to a great degree, in the 105. So I think we have leadership there that's certainly a lot more sensitive to our issues, but it doesn't mean that there aren't systematic issues that still remain. So for those who don't know, I chair the Public Safety Committee of the City Council, which gives me oversight over the New York City Police Department. And I've been in this capacity for the last 2.5 years, banging away on a lot of the disparate issues that impact our communities, from marijuana arrests and summonses to the DNA database. Do you know that they take, when your young people go to the precinct and the cops would give them a cigarette or a bottle of water, and they would take their DNA and store it into a database, and which it remains till today. And we've moved to push the NYPD to ban that practice and to really follow state rules and get rid of that local database. Then you have the gang database, which criminalizes our young people too, in which when your young people walk to the store, if they have a blue shirt on, they may be considered Crip. And then they're moved into this gang database. And then, God forbid, they get in trouble for a low-level offense. The DA pulls them up, and if they're in that database, they'll hold them longer, or they'll utilize that database to criminalize, you know, our communities more. So that's all work that's been done. There were 50,000 people in that database. We got the NYPD to move it down to about 20,000 now. We're still doing work on that. The DNA database just as well. Almost 50,000 people in it. Many of you remember the Howard Beach case of the jogger. The NYPD went to 200 Black men's homes and took their DNA and put it in this database, although they weren't even suspects in the crime, and their DNA remains in that database. So we're looking, and we have done a lot of work, and the police commissioner has agreed to remove names out of that database and to reform that database, but it's still not moving fast enough. I'll just speak quickly about just some other things that are going on. Specifically now, the budget is upon us, and most of you know that the NYPD gets state, federal, and city funding. Their budget is about $6 billion this year.
You got 1 minute, Councilman.
Got it. I'm going to sum it up. So the biggest fight this year is to really defund, and not defund in the sense of get rid of the police department, because there are people who are misconstruing the message, and that's on the advocate side. That's not on my side. But we are looking to rein in overtime, cancel the police class, which doesn't even make sense right now, and restore things like the Summer Youth Employment Program. So I'm literally in negotiations on that now. We're looking at a lot of bloat in the NYPD, which we do every year. The only difference this year is that we have the backing to do it. The other thing I'll end, Elaine, just give me like an extra minute. We are passing a package of about 7 pieces of legislation in my committee next week. And thank God for all the protests. I've had a bill on a disciplinary matrix going back last year, which I got an agreement with the police commissioner to look at. And this is going to be the first time the police commissioners mandated to come up with disciplinary punishments attached to infractions in the NYPD. So this is a historic bill. We're also going to pass Jamani Williams' bill on the Right to Record Act. We're going to pass Alika Samuel's bill. A lot of police officers were covering up their badges during the protests as well, and that's nothing new to us in our communities. But we're going to certainly strengthen the laws against that. And then I spoke of the right to record. So those are just some quick things that we are working on. But I just want to say to everybody on this line, I appreciate those who spoke of their privilege, because you're totally right. The first thing to do to heal is to acknowledge that privilege, and then to go out there and take action against folks in the streets. And that's why 50A was repealed, something we've been talking about historically for a long time. That momentum carried up to Albany. So we got to keep these conversations going. It's not the last time and not the first time.
Okay, Councilman.
So God bless you all. I got to get on I have a town hall with the UFT, so that's why I have to leave at 5. But I want to thank you, Elaine, for hosting this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. Is Councilman Aldris on?
Yes, Elaine, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good.
Okay, I hope you can see me too.
Yes,
I had
I
some
see you.
technical. Oh, great. I've been on since about 4:10. I want to apologize for being a couple minutes late, but I too had some technical difficulties here. First, I want to say, it's great to be a part of this call. I want to thank you for inviting me. I think that people often think that the Rockaways is divided in so many ways that we're not able to bridge the gap and work together and communicate one another. I want to tell you that I had a great relationship with Senator Sanders when he was my colleague in the city council. And I have an excellent friendship and relationship with Councilmember Richards. We work very closely together on lots of issues: transportation, housing, zoning, and so many areas. And he's a wonderful colleague, a great father, and really a great elected official. The people in Far Rockaway are really lucky to have him. I know he's running for higher office, and I wish him all the best. I want to thank also the Rockaway Women for Progress for co-sponsoring this event. It's a great way to bring the West End and the East End together. And we've been trying to do this for years, for over a decade. I've been in office for 11 and a half years. We've always tried to identify ways where we can bring the two communities together. We know that they're very different racially, demographically, in terms of the density in certain areas. So we understand that. But I think the real wake-up call for a lot of folks around the city, even before Mr. Floyd was murdered by the police officer, was the disparities related to the COVID crisis and the number of individuals who were not only getting infected with COVID, but also people who were dying as a result of the COVID crisis, because that was an issue that affected every community and every neighborhood. And I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people, not only around the city, but even for people on the west end of Rockaway, to say, hey, we've sort of sugarcoated a lot of these issues for a long time. Maybe we haven't tackled them head on. We really need to start addressing some of the economic and the health disparities and educational disparities and the housing disparities and the racial disparities, all the issues that are driving that divide between the West and the East End. So my commitment has been, and I've told this to Donovan Richards, and I'm happy to share it with all of you, is that we have a number of bills that are coming up for consideration next week. And I am going to give all those bills my honest, fair, and full consideration. I've never been afraid to admit when I'm wrong. I did on Stop and Frisk publicly. when former Mayor Bloomberg came out and said he was wrong and he apologized to communities of color for the impact that stop and frisk had, I came out and said on Twitter myself that the number of frisks, the way it was carried out, that it was wrong, and that we caused irreparable harm to communities that it's going to take us a very long time to repair. So even when I've made decisions that I later regret, I'm not afraid to say that I'm sorry, and that I'm willing to work with people to try to make amends and make things right again. And that's a commitment that I've made today. Most importantly, I want to thank all the people that shared their stories on the call today. I listened to every single one of them. Again, I was off the line for the first 9 minutes, but I did get on at 4:10. Very, very powerful stories, very important stories. Every story has a name, has an identity, and has dignity and importance. And I just for the sake of having to be on the call and listening to everybody's story, it was very, very important to me. So Elaine, I want to thank you especially, and the members of the NAACP from Far Rockaway, for even just allowing me to be a part of this. You know, I recognize that we're in a divided time right now in our country, politically and in every other way. But if there's any measure of comfort in knowing that I am committed to working with you and my colleagues in government to find ways that we can achieve criminal justice and police reform and bridge the gap between police and community and vice versa, I'm committed to doing that. And I mean that honestly. And I'm not running for anything. I'm term limited. I'm not looking for any votes. I'm here because I want to be here, and because I recognize the pain and the torment that people are feeling right now in so many parts of the country, but right here in our own backyard too. And I want to do something positive and try to change that. I want to try to change that. I want to play a small role. I have a small, but I think a very important role in trying to address some of those disparities and helping to heal the wounds that people have felt for a very long time. And I mean that sincerely and from the bottom of my heart. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Jean, since we started with our elected official, I feel that maybe we should just let the rest of them speak, and then at the very end, we'll do our closing. Okay, thank you. So now, Senator Dabo, would you like to say a few words?
And thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine, and to the entire NAACP Far Rockaway, thank you so much. To Jean and Jody and all the Rockaway Women for Progress, thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this. Very moving, a very timely kind of discussion. Now, I want to thank my colleagues in government, Donovan, Eric, Stacy. It's an honor to work with them, and they truly are individuals who have their heart in the right spot and do the right thing for the people that they represent. So I want to say thank you to them as well. And to all the speakers, Tatiana, Barbara, Fern, Dr. Short, all those who have spoken and really passionately told of their stories matters to us because hatred, racism is not tolerable on any level. It is not to be tolerated now. It was not to be tolerated even before George Floyd. And that's why I was actually thankful to work with Stacy. We did a hate crime, racism kind of seminar months before the tragedy in Minnesota, because it is so important and something that should not get swept under the rug. But this is going to be something that's going to stay with us, and we need to work on it together as a community. You know, legislatively, I think Lisa George mentioned that it should be taught in our schools and taught to the young children. In this past budget, we put it in the budget where we put money in the state budget for curriculum to teach about the different cultures, whether hate crimes, hate symbols, racism. It's in this year's budget, and it was the right thing to do. And of course, you know, this past week we did a legislative package of reforms that I think is be a positive step forward in fortifying confidence, and once again, in where we need to have it in our police force, watching out for those who don't do the right thing, protecting those that do the right thing. But like I say, instilling upon our community, again, a sense of confidence and trust, which I think is long been around in there. So I think this piece of legislation that I supported is a step in the right direction. And we don't stop there. You know, one thing we have learned, living in Queens, the most diverse borough in the world, is that we work together regardless of our background, regardless of where we come from or our heritage. Bottom line is we are a diverse borough, the most diverse. And we know that we get through things, issues that confront us and are in front of us by working together. That's why, you know, times like this and this kind of meeting and this kind of dialogue is so important. So I'm sure it's not going to be the last time that we get together like this. I look forward to future ones. But again, I want to say thank you to all those who really shine a light on the fact that we need to work together to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So right now, next, I would like to bring on Senator Sanders. Senator Sanders?
Can you hear?
Yes,
Can
we
you hear me?
We hear you.
Can you?
You got 3 minutes, Senator.
All right. I want to thank the NAACP and the Women for Progress, and I thank all of my elected officials who are genuinely trying. But I take a different position. I've been here before. I've been here often before, and I could actually use some of the old speeches to say some of the new stuff. I'm not taking away from anyone, but I'm just saying we're not getting to the heart of the problem, my friends. Everybody has a racism story, and if I had time, I would give my own. I don't. I am reminded of Gil Scott-Heron, the bluesician, as he calls himself. He said that America leads the world in shock, but it doesn't lead the world in deciphering shock. I would suggest to you that police brutality is a symptom, my friends, and not the problem itself. I would suggest to you that even racism, to some degree, is a symptom of a problem. That, like COVID-19, it has a lot of symptoms. And if your person has COVID-19 and they are coughing, and you simply treat the cough, it may help a person feel better. You're helping soothe the throat, but you're not dealing with the underlying problem that's getting worse and worse. I was in the Marine Corps, and I understand the police department. The police are chosen for their aggressiveness. They are chosen because they are supposed to dominate any potential crime scene or crime. So they are chosen for these characteristics, but they also receive a inherently racist training, which tells them that these are the problems. Now, the base of the problem is an economic one, my friends. It's an economic problem. As long as blacks don't own their own neighborhoods, don't own anything worth owning in America, by and large, it leads to them not being able to defend themselves. It's like being a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. Everybody kicks the one-legged man. Maybe it's wrong that they do, but everybody does. And until we address that issue, we're not going to deal with it. We appreciate the empathy that many people are coming up with. I appreciate that. I ask you to go further than that, though. I need you to go beyond empathy and into solidarity. Solidarity says that we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder to solve this problem. While I appreciate your beauty in trying to understand me, I would appreciate even more if we get rid of the structure that creates the problem and makes all of us go into bad people one way or another. To conclude, I believe that a major component of all of this has to be reparations to repair. We have to repair America's original sin, slavery, and letting the slaves go without giving them their back pay. With an economy where a black person has 1/20th of the wealth of the average black, has 1/20th of the wealth of an average white. And that includes rich, poor, whatever, 1/20th. And that number is increasing, not decreasing. We need to push for reparations. Otherwise, we're going to be here again and again and again. We will deal with the cough, But if you don't deal with COVID-19, the pandemic of racialized capitalism, you're not going to deal with this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. So true, so true. Thank you so much. I would like to bring on Assemblywoman Amato.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Elaine, to you, thank you for pulling us together with the Rockaway Women for Progress. I'm honored to be here. Following after my colleagues in government is tough because I think they've all said some really good things. So what I want to bring out is how I'm feeling right now, really honestly first. I'm emotional because I'm a mother. And to listen to Lisa and to listen to Dr. Short's story, I put myself in the shoes as a parent. And I can never, ever understand what you feel like, Elaine, ever. But I'm going to do everything that a mother never has to feel like that again. And to Lisa, you know, to know in a current time where we feel we have a diverse school and issues are being handled, I want to be on the forefront of that and making these conversations. You know what I mean? That's my commitment. Black Lives Matter. I don't even feel, you know, we have to say it. I don't think I have to say it. I don't want to say anything. But of course, I raised in Far Rockaway. Before I took the job or was elected to the job, I made, you know, that's what I fought for with my friends in the community. But now that we're here, and that's what Senator Sanders was talking about, is that we have to make sure that when we're in a room as your elected officials, we're standing up for better schools. Because that's the problem. That's what Senator Sanders is talking about. Fighting for our health care, fighting for our housing, food insecurities. We have to get to the root of the problem to bring equality into the community, into the economics. Minority women, small businesses owned, to get that kick in so that we are the part of the community, that you own your own, you know, own community, as James is saying, and I think it's brilliant. And that's what we've been fighting for. There's not a room that I walk into that I don't bring Far Rockaway with me, because I know the inequalities that we've been facing in this community. Now, sending me to Albany, thank you, because we just passed a package of bills. There's 8 bills that we passed to start bringing some justice into the system, to make sure that if you videotape an incident and it's your camera, you keep your camera, to ban chokeholds statewide, state police to have cameras. These are steps that we're taking in the right direction, but it takes the solidarity of a group like this to speak together to make it work. Because we can make all the laws, but we have to be the messengers. You know, empathy, Jody, you really hit it on the head. Why we're crying? I can't get past the story. I'll be up thinking about it all night, of Dr. Short. That only happened because of the color of your skin. And as someone was raised, my door was open. I lived in a building. My mother let every person, every friend can come in. But I never thought about what it was like when they left my apartment. And I've been thinking about that deeply. Everyone was welcome in, but what happened once you got onto the street and walked home, back down to Wavecrest? I never asked my, you know, what that was like in life to go to the corner store. You know what I mean? So I had feelings about that, because was I not aware, or just because I was able to accept it? But it's a culture, and I don't know who said that first. Racism is a culture, and we have to break it. And the children are the place to start it. I agree with that. I'm proud that my house, along with the senators, have put that legislation out that the curriculum should show it. My colleague Diana Richardson has a stronger piece to put more conversation like that. It is about hate and recognizing it. We have to start somewhere. I'm asking for you to help me get there. Tell me what else we need to do. I say it all the time. If you think there's a great idea and we could bring it to one school, we'll bring it to a school. If there's a discussion we have to have, then we'll start having it. But we have to be that infectious body that starts bringing it out there. People who trust us, people who see us as leaders in our community, to have a conversation, because sometimes it's not comfortable. I have so many questions I want to have on a one-on-one basis. My neighbor Adam, wearing all my favorite wardrobe, we shop at the same store, to talk about some uncomfortable conversations for me to ask the questions, to understand how to process it, to bring it to the next level, because we are going to be that. But I think one thing that you, Dr. Short, that you brought up, I think there's a lot of trauma out there. You didn't say it, but I know you have a lot of trauma. And how do we help the young folks, the Black children, to get past their trauma, to work, to move forward, so we could build community? And the same thing for the white children. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it one side, but you have one, your experience.
30 seconds.
And I want to know how to work in the communities better. because I'm listening here today. I know my job is what I think I was doing. I know I have to do it 400% better. I thank the opportunity for this, and I think we need to do it more often. I think we need to come together and plan some work, actual mission, and actual work together on the street. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Manny, who works for the councilman, is there anybody who I missed of the elected officials? Okay, Mr. Emmanuel Silvers, if you want to take, I'll give you 2 minutes because we're pushing on time. Would you like to say a few words? Manny? Okay, all right. So we're gonna move on if he comes on later. One of my executive board members of the NAACP asked if she could say a few words. So I'm gonna ask if LaToya can come on, if that's okay with you, Jean. And it's only 2 minutes now, LaToya. 2 minutes, okay?
Yes, I'll be brief.
Okay, great.
Okay, I just wanted to share a different approach on what racism could look like in 2020 as well. We've heard the stories from everybody, and I appreciate you for sharing it. And we know the story, unfortunately, of Mr. Floyd and how he was murdered. My story is a little bit different on what I wanted to share. I wanted to look at it from the employment point of view. When I graduated from college, before I entered law school, I decided I was going to work for a few years. And I was very excited to get my first real job in New York. So applying for these jobs, I wasn't hearing back. And then one of the elders told me, change your first name and see what happens. So I sent my resume in as LaToya Funderburk, and I was getting no responses. I sent my resume in as Susan Funderburk. The doors fled open. That was one instance. Present day, after I went to law school, graduated law school, and now I'm in private practice, what it looks like today. I'll go into a courtroom, I'll go before the clerk, letting them know that I'm here to check in for my client. And they'll ask me, are you the paralegal? No, I'm the attorney. I'll go before the judge. Where's the attorney? You're looking at the attorney. I am the attorney. So I just want to give a different look on what it looks like today. The shackles may have been removed, but slavery is still very present today in 2020 America. One of the things that I hope that we take away from this, being brief, is I hope the Rockaway Women for Progress and the NAACP of Far Rockaway, we can actually figure out a way to join forces to work together. We can come up with an action plan on what we would like to see for this peninsula and work on ways to make that happen. Like one of the elected officials quoted Jill Scott Heron, he also stated that the revolution will not be televised. But here we are in 2020, and it is being televised, and it's all blasted on TV so we can see it. So no one can't say that they didn't know, they didn't understand.
30 seconds.
It's prevalent in your face. So I hope that we move from this with an action plan on how we're going to move forward to make this be a story that we don't have to keep sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, because I know we're pressed for time, and I would like for us to get back on schedule. I'm going to reach out to our pastors and priests if they would. Pesach, would you like to say a few words before we turn it over to our clergy? Pesach? Okay, he was on. Now I know Richard Davis, he had told me he had a meeting that he had to go to also. And so I would give him 2 minutes just to comment. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Stewart, and everyone for really inviting me to this important conversation.
Your sound, we can't hear you.
Okay, I got to start over. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to share this space with you and for creating such an important space so we can participate in the civil rights movement of our time, in the human rights movement of our time. You know, I can't say it enough, Black Lives Matter, and there are so many ways that racism has manifested itself structurally into institutions. And, you know, we're all learning in this process. I'm learning myself. And undoing racism is an incredibly hard thing to do. And I'm so glad that there are people who are here committing to unlearning generations of racism and generations of trauma that's been taught. I come to you today as a son of indentured laborers. My parents were brought as laborers against their will to the Caribbean, and they work plantations. I came here to this country as an undocumented immigrant. I'm Guyanese. I'm incredibly, it's a shared experience. It's an incredibly moving topic. And I think anytime there are moments to find these intersections of shared struggle, we have to uplift them because it builds the movement for human rights and for elevating Black Lives Matter in this country, because for so long it hasn't. I'm a candidate in Assembly District 31. I'm running Michelle Titus was the former member. I'm honored to be the Democratic Party's nominee. I'm very, excited to have the support of Congressman Meeks, Councilmember Richards, Councilmember Ulrich, a lot of folks who are here because I've had a history of working with folks in bridging communities. Now, I'm not from Rockaway. I'm not from Rockaway. I live in South Ozone Park, and I'll tell you, we have a bigger bridge to build because it's a very large district. And I want you to know that you have a hand extended out. You have a partner who's willing to try my best to build this district collaboratively. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now I was told that Dr. Short would like to come back in. You got 1 minute? Dr. Short?
Yes, I'm here. So basically, what I was going to comment to Assemblyman Amato, the way to combat this scenario is to call out the bad apples where they stand and unify with the good officers so we can shine a light on those that embarrass the badge. I'm an educator. I don't summarily back educators just because they're in the teachers union. If you are doing something that is incorrect and you are not representing what it's supposed to be an educator, I want you out of my fold, because to me, being an educator is one of the most important jobs on this planet. So that in itself is step one, and step two is rebuilding the relationship with the community. So having different youth forums with the students in the community with good officers, building that rapport. And I have no problem with assisting you with that in any shape, form, or fashion. Just let me know. But those are the ways that I feel we can start to change the narrative and get it going the way it needs to go.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Emmanuel Silvers if he would say a few words.
Hey, sorry, I had to step out before because still got to do like 100 other things. But I want to thank you all for having this, Rockaway Women for Progress and the NAACP, because I think these conversations are so important. These conversations are the beginning of the next step within this process. And it's crazy that people even have to say Black Lives Matter 60 years after the Civil Rights Movement. It's crazy that we're still having those conversations, but we're still having those conversations because we didn't have these conversations after the Civil Rights, or we didn't have enough of them. And I think it's, one thing we need to remember is that Rockaway is full of racist people. Not everybody, but there's a lot of racism in Rockaway. And there's a lot of racism in any community that is an ethnic enclave or has a racial enclave, or you have the majority, you have one race in one area. You're gonna get some type of racism, but it is important for us to call it out. It is important for us to continue to let our neighbors know what they're doing is racist, and let anyone know that we come into contact with that what they're doing is racist. And so I do think it's very important, and what you're doing right here is very important, to bring in the white community. And they're the ones who are gonna have to tell their family members, hey, what you just said, that offhand comment, that was racist. And so I do wanna, I wanna comment on that, because in Rockaway, we have a lot of those issues still. No matter how, I went to school at 114 for a few years when I was young. I went to school all over Rockaway, and I've seen racism all over Rockaway in so many different communities. So we have to stomp it out. It's not something that is going to just go away because we say that we're beyond racism, or that just because we get a black president. No, we have to have these conversations. We have to get uncomfortable, and we have to continue to do the work, continue to do the protests, and continue to reform all of the systems, not just the police department is probably one of the most important systems to reform, but there are so many other systems, especially our entire justice system, that was built to hold back people of color, specifically the Black community. And we got to continue to do that work with our elected officials. And so I want to thank our state elected officials for taking multiple big steps, but one huge step when it came to repealing 50A, so we can have some real accountability in the police department. And thank you for giving me some time to talk.
Thank you, thank you. I would like to bring on, I'm not pronouncing your name, it's Leibtag. Would you care to say a few words? Rabbi? You're on mute. You got to take your phone off of mute. Okay.
The first thing is, don't insult the profession. I'm not a rabbi.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make one comment. I mean, I represent just me and the community that lives around the Reeds Lane area. But I wanted just to react to something that LaToya said. I use the name Chaim now. All right, the Chaim is my Hebrew name. But when I was born, which was not long after the end of the Holocaust, and I'm kind of reacting to some of the things that Fern said before. My aunt told my mother, and I was born in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, don't give him a Jewish name, give him an English name, because the anti-Semites, the Nazis, are going to get you. So make sure that he can hide in the community using Howard and not use a Hebrew name. It wasn't until like the 1970s. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and I went to a predominantly all-Black high school. There was like six of us Jews, but we worked together very closely. But when I saw, as the women's movement began in the late 60s and early 70s, and the African American movement began, I said, why am I ashamed to call myself Chaim? And I'm going to start to use. Why should I be ashamed to use Chaim? And I got rid of Howard, and that's why I'm Chaim. Although I've never really officially changed my legal name, but it's always a great way to start to understand that I very much understand. I don't know, but I certainly can feel, and I feel very much the anguish, etc., that we're all feeling today, because it's a terrible thing that's going on here. And I thought also, somebody said that we ended this a while ago, and it is so, and I have to spend a lot of time with my own friends telling them, I think it was Richard who said it, that joke isn't funny. Stop making those jokes, so they're not funny. You can't make fun of somebody because of the color of their skin, etc. It's just not, or their religion. We can laugh at ourselves. I think Jews have always laughed very much at ourselves, but we can't laugh at others. We can laugh with them. We can joke with them, but we can't laugh at them. I'm committed on this end of the peninsula. I worked with Audrey Pfeffer for many years in the Jewish Community Council. trying to reach out to as many people as we possibly can. I've been working with Pastor Gray quite a lot, trying to bridge our gaps. We were working together when the
I'm
a
going
lot
to
of the
have to cut you off because we're running out of time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of
You never can tell a Jewish person they can only speak for 3 minutes. It's impossible. My 8th grade algebra teacher told me he's going to wire my braces together. Bottom line is, we're here. I work with Pesach. I'm sorry that he left. But we're here. We want to do whatever we possibly can. We continue to do what we can. And we will make sure that racism ends, because if it ain't me and it ain't you, what other things can we be doing? But we've got to teach our children. That's where it starts, etc. And thank you for letting me be involved.
Thank you so much. Pastor Gray?
I think he had dental work yesterday. He was hurt.
He said he wanted to speak. He had text saying he wanted to speak. Pastor
Hello.
Gray?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Forgive me, my voice bad. I had some oral surgery done. But let me first just thank you and all those who are responsible for putting together, all the elected officials. We just thank God for each and every one of you. But let me just bring this to our attention. And it's kind of the elephant that's in the room. The truth of the matter is, in our Rockaway community, and I'm talking about from one end of the peninsula to the other, Stacy, who's a good friend of mine, I love her dearly, and Eric and all of Joe, all of them. The truth of the matter is, if you wanted to live in Hamels, you could. If Joe wanted to live in Nordak, he could. If Eric wanted to live in Redfern, he could. But the truth is, no matter how much money I may have, if I wanted to live in Breezy Point, that could not happen. These are things in which we need to be serious about and address it within our community. Why are there places in our community that are truly segregated? Is as though, and I'm not saying anything is bad about the people who live in Breezy Point. What I am saying, that an individual being denied the opportunity to live in Breezy Point presents a wall of racism. I remember as a child, we can ride our bikes. You can go all the way up to the gate, but you couldn't go in. These are things that we must address. Everybody should have equal opportunity of living where he or she chooses to live. Shouldn't be no place within our community that is cut off from a particular ethnic group. So I just want to throw that out. I know we really don't want to kind of point the finger there, but that's something that needs to be addressed. And I don't know how. The question is, why? Thank you. I love y'all all.
Thank you so much. And you did that in less than 2 minutes. Your mouth must be hurting you. I love you, Pastor Gray. Thank you so much. We have Shay, who's a candidate. He has a previous thing that he has to go to too, because I would like we got 1 minute, Shay, come on now. After that, Jean, will you introduce the priest?
It's gonna read again or it's over? Sorry.
Thank you, Elaine.
Yes.
Thank
1
you
minute now.
to speak. I'll be very brief, so I'll be on my way. I just want to say, first and foremost, that Black lives have always mattered, in my opinion, because we have contributed to every facet of American culture. So in my view, yes, Black lives have always mattered, and it is important that we continue to bring to the forefront the contributions that African Americans have made towards to the culture of American society. And it's going to take enormous amount of political will and backbone from our elected officials across the state of New York, and of course here in Southeast Queens, to dismantle the systemic, to dismantle the system of systemic racism that has been designed to oppress and disenfranchise African Americans. And then I know that Manny mentioned that we haven't been having enough of this conversation, but I disagree. I think we've been having this conversation for a very, very long time. But now, more than ever,
30 seconds.
Starting to listen. So I am definitely, I want to thank you everyone that is here for being part of this conversation. Let's continue to have this conversation. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you across the district as I make my rounds. Thank you all.
Thank you. Jean, would you like to introduce one of the priests?
Sure, thank you. Father Bill from St. Francis de Sales is here to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. I've been thinking about, because I came to Rockaway in 1988 when I was assigned to St. Camillus, and I worked in St. Camillus and then in Stella Maris High School. And then I went back to high school to St. Francis Prep in Queens. And I was the chaplain there for 19 years, working with probably the most diverse Catholic high school in the United States with so many different kids. Now I got assigned to Bell Harbor, and it's always the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, and this is a very good step. All the times that I've been here, this is the first time we've been able to do this and be able to talk and listen, and really listen, to listen to the pain, to listen, to try to help understand, and to be able to teach our children. That's the most important thing, to teach our children that this can't continue, that we have to do work together, and we have to know that we're in this together. Remember, faith without action is dead. We have to put the faith together. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Jean?
Thank you. Would you like me to say a few closing remarks, Elaine?
No. I thought it was another pre-song, because I had
no,
okay, so I have Pastor White. Would you like to say a few words? Pastor White? All right, then we have Khalil Anderson.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Go ahead. You got 1 minute.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for having this discussion. I think this is a very important part of making sure we begin the process of healing our communities. I'm also a candidate for the New York State Assembly. I want to briefly, in the 1 minute time that I have, talk about some of my racial experiences in the Rockaways. I was 11 years old. I was going to a block party on 135th Street in Newport for a teacher who invited me, and we were riding some bikes that her son had given us, and we were accused of stealing them, and we were accused of being in the wrong neighborhood by police, right? And that's just one of the many racial experiences I have had in the Rockaways. Growing up as a young black man, we have a target on our backs by the police department. And if we're serious about talking about addressing the issues of racism, we've got to attack it at the root cause. And the root cause is systems that were built, not for black and brown folks, for black folks, but for the suppression of our ideas and opinions and our abilities to be free. If we look at the history of police came out of the Fugitive Slave Act, making sure that we're, folks who were escaping from slavery were brought back to quote unquote justice, right? So we have to look at that system from its historical context, and apply it to today, and see to it that we reform that system by calling it wherever we see it. And I think that that's a very important part of our discussions, is making sure that we look at historical context and now. And that's what we need to do when we're going forward. We're asking our white allies who are on this phone call today if you have folk who are in the police force, if you know folk who are on the police force, and you know that they're not doing the right thing, and you know they're disrespecting our people, you need to call them out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Lisa, George, you still on? You want to say a few words?
Did you just call my name?
Yes, because we had candidates who are running for the assembly seat, and you spoke as a mother. You didn't speak as a candidate, because Richard, Shay, Khalil, those are all candidates running for the assembly seat. So I would like to give you a minute also to speak, if you care to, in regards, still sticking on our topic.
Yes, still sticking on the topic, and I'll say this in under a minute. Again, as a parent, I think it's important for us to have these conversations with our youth while they're young about racism. We can't sweep it under the carpet and act like it doesn't exist. I've been living in the Rockaways for a long time, and the first time I ever felt it so strongly was when the school moved into Stella Maris. I didn't know it existed because I never went past 59th Street, so I didn't know what to expect. And if we don't have these conversations with our youth now, then they will grow up to be adults that are uncomfortable around Black people. And we are keeping the system going. We must start having these conversations in our schools with our youth. And I want to come out strong on that, whether it's my son's school or any school. As I live here in the Rockaway Peninsula, everyone here has spoken about the racism that exists, and I would hope from the east to the western end that we could all work together to end it and see what we can do to just have more unity here. Just have more unity here on the peninsula where we all live.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having this very important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I hope I come. Oh, Pastor White, are you able to get on? Because she's having difficulty. She's on, but we can't hear her. So I just want to, before Jean and I give our closing remarks, I want to thank everybody for participating. Facebook, thank you so much. Everybody who's on Zoom, thank you so much. We appreciate you for hearing this. And this is something that we have to do. We have to continue. And we all got to work together. And we will come back and tackle other topics also. So again, like I said, I thank you all. And Jean, would you like to come on and say a few words?
Yeah, thank you. Elaine, I want to say that I want to thank you very much for, just we had a lot of hard conversations just in planning this, and really honest conversations about how the rollout of this would go. And knowing our community, knowing how hard this was, and how important it is. And I just want to say, a bunch of people have talked about systems, and I think that they're right. And I think that that's absolutely where we need to start. I've heard some people say, our system is broken. Unfortunately, I disagree. I think the system is working the way it was intended to work, and it's got to change. So I hope that this is the start of some real forward progress. And when I get nervous, I lean on quotes. So I'm going to do that in closing, and I'm going to quote Robin DiAngelo. The key to moving forward is what we do with our discomfort. We can use it as a door out, blame the messenger and disregard the message, or we can use it as a door in by asking, why does this unsettle me? What would it mean for me if it were true? So I'll leave with that. And so hopefully that this is a conversation that allows for some action. So thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
And everybody, thank you, everybody. This was not easy for, I don't think probably anybody, but so important.
And I do thank everyone. Pastor White is still trying to get on, but I would like to make a statement that Mount Carmel Baptist Church on June 14th, Flag Day, they're having something outside to discuss and talk about the George Floyd and the death and everything that have taken place with George Floyd May 25th and was years ago. So June 14th at 4 p.m. outside of Mount Carmel Baptist Church, 348 Beach 71st Street. We are practicing social distancing, so we will have the ground marked on where people can stand. We'll be outside. Everybody will have to have a face mask on. If you do not have one, we will provide you with some, and we will also have hand sanitizer. So the way we are standing in unity now, I love it. If you feel, come outside so that you can stand outside. And as I say, we will practice social distancing and listen to the rules because none of us want to get corona. I've lost too many people to that coronavirus in this Rockaway. And so I thank everybody. And I just want to say good night. And Jean, you know, we work good together and we're going to continue this. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Night. Thank you.
Have a blessed night, ladies
One.
and
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.